Middle-earth has experienced two Dark Lords. The first was Morgoth, once known as Melkor, who had to be defeated twice before he was cast out into the void. The second was his most powerful servant, Sauron, who also had to be defeated twice before he was reduced to the point of impotence. Apart from some brief periods of peace, Middle-earth has always known the presence or at least the threat of a Dark Lord. So what makes the Fourth Age so different? Why can't there be a third Dark Lord? It's worth knowing that Middle-earth actually came close to having a third Dark Lord during the War of the Ring. Saruman was certainly vying for that position, and had he acquired the One Ring, his dream would have become reality. He would have become a third Dark Lord. Likewise, both Galadriel and Gandalf make it clear that if they took and mastered the One Ring, they would have simply replaced Sauron, and probably would have become a Dark Lord and a Dark Lady in their own rights. And then there's the Witch King of Angmar, who kind of played the role of a Dark Lord for much of the Third Age, and might have been considered such if it wasn't for the fact that he was a slave to Sauron and that their fates were tied. Of course, in the Fourth Age, the previously mentioned people have either been killed or sailed into the West. So who could be the potential candidates for becoming a third Dark Lord? Gandalf seems certain that Sauron is permanently out of the equation, and Saruman might be able to reform his power given enough time, but there's no guarantee. Other beings of similar power are Radagast, and there's pretty much no chance of him becoming a Dark Lord, that's even assuming he's still alive, and the mysterious Blue Wizards. But their fates are unknown, they might even be dead by this point as well. Perhaps Morgoth had other powerful servants who fled and have just been in hiding, like the Balrog, Durin's Bane, or they've simply been biding their time, like Sauron originally did. If we're thinking way outside the box, why can't an Ainur in Valinor go rogue and then make their way to Middle-earth? This is all fun speculation, but Tolkien himself actually answers our questions in some of his letters. In letter 156, written to one Robert Murray in November 1954, Tolkien tells us this. But they were still living on the borders of myth, or rather, this story exhibits myth passing into history or the dominion of men. For of course, the shadow will rise again in a sense, as is clearly foretold by Gandalf, but never again, unless it be before the Great End, will an evil demon be incarnate as a physical enemy. To put it simply, Tolkien tells us that while shadow and evil will never truly go away, it will never again be led by an incarnate demon as a physical enemy. This rules out any spiritual creature like Morgoth or Sauron. In July 1956, in a letter to Miss J. Bum, what a fantastic surname, Tolkien again crushes the idea of a third Dark Lord. I am afraid I have the same feeling. I have been forced to publish upside down or backwards, and after the Grand Crash and the end of visibly incarnate evil before the dominion of men, or simple history, to which it all led up, the mythological and elvish legends of the elder days will not be quite the same. So yeah, Tolkien kind of uses an archaic version of English, even for his own time, so he can be a little hard to follow, but let me explain. He once again uses the phrase incarnate evil to refer to Morgoth and Sauron, and specifically says that it ended following the Grand Crash. The Grand Crash is specifically stated to be before the Dominion of Men, which is regarded as the advent of the Fourth Age. So in other words, Sauron's final fall was the Grand Crash, and that nothing like him would rise again in the Fourth Age. Tolkien would go on to live another 17 years after this second letter, in which he would write plenty more, and change his mind many times, but there isn't any evidence to suggest that he changed his mind on, as he put it, the end of incarnate evil. During the Fourth Age and beyond, the Dominion of Men, there would be no third Dark Lord. Of course, this doesn't mean the end of evil. Morgoth and Sauron's influence on the world would always remain, and due to the nature of men, this ugly influence wouldn't truly go away. Tolkien explores this in his short-lived Lord of the Rings sequel, The New Shadow, where not long after Aragorn's death, some of the men of Gondor would begin to worship the darkness. And while there wouldn't be true evil on the scale of a Dark Lord, there would absolutely be tyrants who were responsible for plenty of death and destruction. In the early days of the Fourth Age, some of these tyrants might be orcs, dragons, or maybe even evil dwarves, capable of great evil but not all powerful. But most of these tyrants would be mortal men, limited in power and scope, and ultimately doomed to die a mortal's death. We have examples of them in our own history. Men like Hitler or Stalin or Pol Pot. Brutal dictators who were responsible for millions of deaths and desired absolute power. Tyrannical rulers? Absolutely. Dark Lords? No, not really. Hitler was high on opioids and methamphetamines when he shot himself in his bunker. Stalin died of a stroke in a puddle of his own piss. Pol Pot died of heart failure. These would be the fates of any aspiring third Dark Lords because mortals, can die quite easily. And how can you be a Dark Lord if you're like Idi Amin, who was briefly a dictator of Uganda and died of kidney failure, likely as a result of weighing over 200 kilograms? Can you imagine if Sauron died from being overweight? Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, or at least found it interesting. This was a short video, but an interesting concept that I wanted to explore, and I hope you've learned something new. And if you had a headcanon or were planning on writing a fanfiction story about a third Dark Lord rising, I hope I completely and utterly crushed you, much like a tyrant would. Thanks again to my Patreons, Mo L, Paul Leone, Patricia Barbosa, MNC B10, and Andrew Welch. If you'd like to support me there, link is in the description. But until next time, thanks, farewell, and remember, don't aspire to be a third Dark Lord. Do something positive instead.